Hello, my dear dreamers. Tonight, we're stepping into a room that doesn't exist on any map, a place that only appears when it knows you're ready. So grab a blanket, get comfortable, and let the day slip away. I'll guide you through a story of hidden doors, books that write themselves, and the kind of magic that keeps you company when the world is quiet. Now, take a deep breath, and let's begin. You find the door only when you're too tired to keep pretending you're fine. Past midnight, the Academy's lanterns have dimmed to a patient amber. The stone corridors keep their breath, listening for footsteps that never come. You press your palm to a seam in the wall where two slabs don't quite agree, and something yields with the softest click, as if the building has been waiting for your touch, not your key. Inside is not a room so much as a hush. A round chamber with a single high window, curtainless, letting in a coin of moon. Shelves shoulder the walls, low and friendly. On them, books the color of tea, each unmarked, each identical. A kettle squats on a brazier that has no fire and yet gives off warmth like lazy sunlight. A chair leans toward a reading nook piled with cushions in unfashionable patterns, the sort of prince grandmothers love and architects pretend not to. You've been at Thornmere for all of 2 weeks and already it feels like you've inherited someone else's life, the schedule, the smiles, the way your name sounds in other people's mouths. Arin, they say, as if trying on the shape. You answer because that's what a person does when called. You answer because answering is easier than explaining that you have brought a winter inside you and don't yet know how to thaw it. Hello, you say to the quiet. It holds. You take a book. It opens to a page that has never met ink. The first sheet is the color of cream. The second, the same. The 10th, the same. There is no title to apologize for, no author to disappoint. Your thumb presses at the gutter and, without thinking, you imagine a sentence. Just one. The kind you wish would open a life, a door, when ready, chooses its dreamer. The paper darkens. Words grow like moss, neat and certain, exactly the sentence you only meant to think. You slap the book shut, heart jolting, and look around for a trick, wires, mirrors, a snoring librarian with a sly grin. No one. You crack it again. The pale field waits. Her name was. The ink arrives beneath your hesitation and refuses to guess. Rude, you whisper, then try again. Their name was Arin, which meant nothing and therefore could mean anything. The letters knit themselves, calm as snowfall. You sit. The cushions accept you in a practiced embrace, and the kettle hums approval. A cup appears on a small table that wasn't there a moment ago, steam ribboning. You stare into it and discover that your reflection is braver in tea than in mirrors. On the windowsill, a little bell shaped like a moon. When you breathe too loudly, it tinkles. What are you? You ask the room. A draft moves the pages of the book to a clean sheet. We are a way to keep you company while you tell the truth. The sentence isn't yours. The handwriting looks older than the dust in the corners. You turn the page back and forth. Blank, then words, then your pulse in your ears, then a laugh you didn't know you owed yourself. All right, you say. Then let's be honest. You write about the train that carried you to Thornmere with your stomach in its own luggage. About the letters from home that are mostly weather and politeness. About how you memorize the timetables to avoid memorizing people. You write about the winter, the one you've been saving for later, the one you found has no later big enough. The book listens. The ink dries without smearing. It does not correct you. It does not ask for more than you give, it simply makes space and keeps making it. When you tire of yourself, you try not being you. You think of a city that rides on the back of a whale and harvests stars with long-handled nets. You imagine a baker who can hear when a loaf is ready by the way vowels soften in the oven. You picture a lighthouse that signals not to ships but to clouds, convincing storms to choose different harbors. Each thought arrives as print. The world grows in small, precise paragraphs. "Arin," says a voice. You twist so fast the chair complains. On the far shelf, between two blank-spined volumes, a wooden plaque hangs crookedly. You could have sworn it was empty before. Now it bears a line carved shallow, "Please return books to their proper dreams." "Arin," the room says again, but this time the voice is low and, no, not the room. The bell. The moon bell. It doesn't ring so much as syllable, a tremor in the air shaping your name. We kept a window for you. You set the cup down. Who's we? The bell hushes, as if you've asked it to remember something unkind. The book turns its own page. To write is to promise tomorrow that today mattered. It is a sentence that should be stitched into banners and flown above every lonely place. You it into your chest and feel it make a little space around your heart. You write until the moon is thin as a fingernail and your eyes fold closed without your permission. When you wake, your cheek bears the faint lattice of the page and the kettle has reheated itself. The book rests with a ribbon across its middle, a ribbon you didn't place there. It is green, the exact green of early pears. Under it, in smaller writing than before, "Come back when you are ready to read what you will one day risk." You put the ribbon in your pocket like a good luck lie. At breakfast, the world is loud again. Someone argues passionately about constellations that cannot be seen in rain. A girl with hair like spilled ink laughs in every direction. You hold your secret like a warm stone and say nothing. The day tries to spend you. You let it spend only what you can afford. When the bell in the west tower declares it is not quite night, you return the way you came. The seam is there. Your palm knows its part. The click is a welcome, not a test. Inside, the hush has learned your shape. "Hello," you say. The bell answers, "Hello." And on the table, beneath the moon's coin, a second book waits, this one bound in cloth the color of stormlight, corners kissed with silver. On its first blank page, a single word has already written itself, small and brave. Begin. You begin, because the book asked, and because something inside you has been practicing beginning for years. The stormlight volume accepts your first sentence like a lake receiving a stone, with ripples that outlive the drop. Your words disturb you in the good way, the way a room does when you open all its windows and realize the air you were breathing was old. You decide rules. Not out loud, the room dislikes declarations. Quiet rules, the sort you carry like a pebble in your pocket. Rule 1, you will only write what you can stand to hear read back. Rule 2. If the room gives you a gift, you will say thank you even if what arrives isn't what you thought you wanted. Rule 3. You will not ask who else knows this place. You will not ask, and therefore you cannot be told, and therefore you cannot be disappointed. You write in chapters of 3 paragraphs each, because your hands like the rhythm. You build a harbor town that boats never reach. The townsfolk set a long table down the middle of the pier every dusk and eat by the blue light of algae that came to love their laughter. You give the town a bell tower, and because you are you, you give the bell a voice. It answers, "We are not the only bells that speak." The sentence writes itself in the margin, smaller than your text, like a friend leaning in. You lift your pen. You can annotate, you ask the air. Silence. Then, in the margin again, you can listen. Excellent. You draw a box around the words. Who are you? A teacup appears. You endure the urge to interrogate the flavor. Cinnamon first, then a citrus bravado that makes your tongue applaud. In the steam, a question appears and vanishes. Who are you when no one is watching you be you? Rude, you say, and grin. Fair. You try an answer on the page. I am a person who stays to stack chairs after parties I didn't enjoy. I am a keeper of small promises. I believe doors are moods, not facts. The margin replies, keeper. Useful word. You keep the harbor alive for a while. It becomes a place to rest your hands when your day has been all edges. People who aren't people yet wander in asking to be named. You oblige sparingly. Names are heavy even when carried by ink. Between chapters you draft your real homework. Histories, diagrams, the occasional apology dressed as analysis. It is easier here. The hush is not empty, it is full of attention. You finish twice as fast and twice as calm. In the blank room without a map, effort does not grind, it glides. On the 4th evening, trouble arrives not with thunder but with a scratch. A long, careful sccch across the chamber, as if a pencil is being dragged along the stone. You follow the sound to the window's sill. A line has been etched into the ledge, shallow but recent. 3 words, return. What's owed? Your stomach makes a small, unhelpful noise. What do I owe, you ask? The bell does not ring. The kettle pretends it is elsewhere. The book turns a page and reveals handwriting that is not yours and not the room's tidy italics. The letters lean like a person mid-run. Dear keeper, it says, if you have found the room, then you have also found what I misplaced. Please return it. The cost is larger than my apology can be. You check your pockets like a child caught by a kindly witch. The green ribbon is there, pear bright, smoother now from your restless thumb. You look at it with new attention, as if someone has told you it is more than cloth. What are you? You ask the ribbon. It remains a ribbon, which is both a disappointment and a relief. In the margin, objects are often their stories first and their shapes second. Fine, you tell the room, which is also telling yourself. If it is owed, I will return it. But to whom? And how? A second scratch answers, this time on the opposite wall, lower, as if whoever is writing is tired. Bring it to the loom. You wait for your memory to produce a helpful staircase labeled Loom, this way. Instead, it offers you last year's grocery list and the taste of an orange you ate by the sea when you were 9. You stand there with the useless wealth of your own life and laugh softly at yourself. The Loom, you repeat, hoping the word will turn its face. In the margin, the Loom mends what timelines tear. The Loom listens. The Loom is not on the map for a reason. Because maps want obedience, you say, surprised by your own certainty. A new sentence appears that is neither yours nor the tidy italic hand. It is a third handwriting, all sharp diagonals and modest flourishes. The Loom is where the library keeps its promises. You turn a slow circle, measuring your courage. You have one ribbon, an invented harbor, a bell that pronounces you, and a room that would rather cradle than command. You also have a winter that you've carried for so long it sometimes mistakes itself for you. Okay, you tell the air. Show me the way. Nothing moves. The bell is a moon, the kettle is a hum. The hush is a faithful animal, waiting for your next thought. I don't know where it is, you admit. The Stormlight book brightens on the desk, not with light, but with a certainty you can feel in your fingers. Its corners point just slightly, not north, not down, but between. When you step into the hallway, the stone smells like rain that hasn't happened yet. It should be ordinary. It is not. The corridor stretches exactly as long as your doubt, then, when you commit to a direction, shortens obediently. You pass 3 portraits that are all of the same hill in different weather. The last one has a small door painted at its base. You check the seam beside it and feel the click you've begun to crave. Beyond, a stair no architect would confess to. It descends, but slowly, the way good conversations do. You count 47 steps and then stop, because counting pulls you out of the listening. At the bottom waits another round room, smaller. No shelves. No books. Only a loom, capital letter unnecessary, it wears its name without ceremony. The wooden frame is tall as 2 of you and wide as a stubborn question. Threads cross in shades your language does not have the right number of words for. The pattern is less a picture than a happening. You hold up the ribbon. Someone asked for this. The loom does not speak. Instead, the threads quiver, the way birds do when a storm changes direction. A little space opens where none was, and you understand that the ribbon does not need to be tied back so much as told where to go. Your mouth is a key when you permit it. Return, you tell it, to the promise that was made. The ribbon leaves your hand with a courtesy you feel in your wrist, floats, and tucks itself among colors that briefly make sense and then do not. For a heartbeat you see a hand like yours, but older, lay another ribbon there, years ago or tomorrow, you cannot say. The threads close. The pattern breathes. In your pocket, absence warms like tea. A sentence writes itself on your palm in a tickle you can't scratch, debt settled. Thank you, you tell the room, the loom, the person who trusted a stranger with a bright piece of cloth. You don't know who you're thanking. It doesn't matter. Gratitude rarely misses. On the way back up, you realize you are lighter by more than ribbon weight. Something has left that was looking for a place to go. In the Stormlight book, when you return, 4 words wait at the top of the next page, neat as a promise kept. Now you may ask, who kept the window for me? You ask, because that is the smallest version of the largest question. The room approves. The bell swings in a draft you can't feel and says your name with the kindness of a well-remembered story. On the sill, the kettle pretends it always knew you'd ask and produces a cup that smells like the first hour after rain. Ink spills onto the page in 3 hands at once, tidy italics, sharp diagonals, and a hand that is new, quick, rounded, a little messy, as if written on a moving train. Tidy, the window was saved by keepers who came before you. Sharp, a window is a mercy we extend to our future selves. Messy, I only asked because someone kept one for me. When I could not breathe, the window taught me how to be bigger than my lungs. You touch the words as if they are feathers. There were others, you say. Of course there were. You're not special in the way you fear. You are special in the way everyone is when they dare to be exact. The margin adds, almost shyly, we liked the way you went down the stairs without counting the last ones. You grin. The room is not a person, but it knows you well in the way rooms do when you do not lie to them. Your harbor town gains a new habit. At dusk, the bell tower tells the sea one truth it hasn't admitted yet. Sometimes the tide goes out to think about it. Sometimes it brings back a shell carved with a reply. You ask another question. What does a keeper keep? Tidy, we keep beginnings safe from endings that arrive too early. Sharp, we keep the thread when the story drops it. Messy, we keep each other. The door clicks behind you. You whirl, expecting a prefect, a scold, a rule shaped like a person. Instead, a boy about your age with freckles like constellations and impatient God through by the handful. He has a book under one arm and the look of someone who reads the last page first in case he doesn't make it there. Oh, he says, like he stepped into the wrong season. You're here. That's true, you agree. He shifts his grip on the book. Right. Sorry. I'm fun. I thought I was early. His eyes flick to the bell, the kettle, the stormlight volume as if checking for changes in a friend's face. You know this place, you say, glad and wary. He nods. Found it last year by accident. Stayed on purpose. He lifts his book. The cover is cloth the color of late dusk. I wrote my admission essay here, if we're being honest. Which I hear we are. Sometimes, you allow. I'm Arin. Arin, says the bell, politely triumphant. Fun beams at it. You've still got the best manners on campus, he tells the bell, then glances at you. Is it all right if I? You weigh your rules. They are yours, which means you may change them if you do so with care. It's your room as much as mine, you say, then panic that you've made a promise you don't understand. The margin writes, shared places get bigger when shared. You exhale. Fun does not take the chair. He sits on the floor with the confidence of someone who had kind floors growing up. He sets his book open on his knees. The pages are full, but not with words. With threads. Bright threads stitched into sentences, the letters formed by the path of needle and floss. It listens to stitches, too, he says, catching your stare. Some days the words won't sit still on the page unless I pin them. He taps a line of embroidery and a phrase glows, not with light, but attention. You tell him about the loom. His whole face does what a window does when it's opened. You found it, he says, aw tidy as the italic hand. I've only ever heard it. In the walls. Like a loom would sound if it was made of wind and the idea of order. You confess the ribbon. He confesses a key. He keeps it on a cord around his neck. It looks ordinary until you look too long, and then every key you've ever known rises in your mind like old towns on a floodplain. What does it unlock, you ask? Sometimes a door, he says. Sometimes a sentence I was afraid to write. He shrugs. It doesn't work if I try to impress it. You regard each other with the curiosity of two people who have found the same backyard gate from different streets. Then you do what people do in rooms that want to help, you work. He stitches and you write. You discover that silence has textures when shared, sturdy, elastic, a silence that makes a cradle of the air. Hours pass in the soft, industrious way hours do when they're being well used. You come up for breath and realize the moon has made a second coin. You realize also that the page has changed you again. Every time, you offload a little more winter. Every time, the room refuses to be cold in your company. Fun closes his book with a gentle thud. Will you come to the autumn fair, he asks, casual and not. They do lanterns on the lake. You can write on them. Set them loose. The trick is to tell them something you're willing to let go of. You are suddenly aware of the weight in your chest that is exactly lantern-sized. I'll try, you say truthfully. Try is an honest verb. He grins. Try is the door that wants to be opened. At the threshold he pauses, as if listening to a line that might be yours or the room's. Good night, Arin. Good night, you answer, and the bell repeats it twice, upgrading it from farewell to blessing. When you are alone again, the margin writes one more line, small as a secret and just as warm. Keepers do not keep the room from others. They keep it for others. You tuck the sentence under your ribs. You have always been better at keeping than taking. Perhaps that is what brought you here. You begin a new chapter in the harbor town. This time, the tide brings in a lantern, wet and stubborn, that refuses to be let go of. The bell tells it a story about doors. It listens. It loosens. It begins again. The autumn fair arrives politely, touching each window with its invitation. Thornmere strings lights between courtyards like constellations that have come down to walk with you. Stalls bloom, paper birds that remember wishes, candied pears tasting of rain, a booth where someone plays the saw until it sounds like a song remembering the person who taught it. Fun meets you under the arch where Ivy is working on forgiving the stone. He has paint on one sleeve. You have a pen behind your ear like a superstition you're still testing. Lanterns first, he says. Then we can pretend to be ordinary. You pay in small coins and larger intentions. The lantern is a simple thing, thin wood, thinner paper, but your hands hold it as if it has been asked to carry something living. The lake receives hundreds of such small suns and makes a sky out of water. What do we write, you ask? Whatever we can afford to have the lake keep for us, Fun says. His pen hesitates, then commits. His face opens and closes, a shutter choosing a scene. He doesn't offer what he wrote, and you don't ask. Not all keeping is of each other's secrets, some is of each other's dignities. You stare at the blank, which is a kind of mirror. The room's rule about honesty follows you like a well-meaning ant. You write, I release the version of me who believes I must be finished to be loved. Your hand shakes. The paper holds. You and Fun kneel at the shore. You set the lanterns down together. The lake takes them without swallowing. They join the slow river of light that moves toward the far reeds where the moon keeps its private reflections. You feel a tug, not on the lantern, on your name. The tug is a sentence you cannot yet hear. Do you feel that, you ask? Fun nods. The loom is awake. You don't run. You don't need to. The path unrolls beneath you because you have decided to arrive. The fair hums behind you, safe as a bedtime story. The seam in the wall is bolder tonight, certain of itself. The click sounds like welcome back. Inside, the hush is not alone. It has company, a draft that knows where it is going, a distant rhythm like a loom would make if it were weaving patience into place. On the table, a book you have not seen before, its cover the color of unripe wheat. On its first page, one line, in that sharp diagonal hand. Bring what you let go of to where promises are kept. You look at Fun. He touches the cord at his neck, then your sleeve, then the bell. He is making sure all the doors are awake. How do we bring something we let go of, you ask, but the question answers itself while it's still leaving your mouth. Letting go is not deletion. It is a change of address. You return to the lake. Lanterns move with the consent of small waves. Yours is easy to find. It knows you. When you pick it up, it doesn't drip. The night has chosen not to be cruel. Back down the stair that refuses numbers. Into the loom's company. The threads are singing in the register only the room's bones hear. You hold the lantern up and the words you wrote ghost across your knuckles. You feel a sting, then a relief, then the feeling of a hand you love unclenching. Return, you tell it, voice steady, to the promise that can carry you. The lantern breathes once like a creature that was briefly a person. The flame inside bows and becomes a thread. It travels into the pattern without smoke, without ash, without regret. Your words do not vanish. They repurpose. They make space where you used to be crowded. Fun is crying in the way brave people do, quietly, efficiently, like rain that knows the roof is listening. You want to offer him a joke and do not. You want to offer him your hand and do. He takes it. I wrote, he says, hiccuping politely between syllables, that I release the need to be someone else's echo. You squeeze. You can be your own bell. He laughs wetly. Rude. Fair. The loom softens. You feel it not in your eyes but in the soles of your feet, as if the floor is exhaling. The thread still. The pattern carries 2 new lines you could find again if you needed to but do not need to. On your way back up, the stair yields a memory that is not yours and does not ask to be. A hand lays a ribbon. Another hand lays a key. A third hand lays a feather you recognize as a question mark. All 3 hands belong to people who once had winters exactly the size of their lungs. In the round room, the Stormlight book has been busy. It has written you an instruction disguised as a compliment. You are ready to write a thing that does not ask permission to matter. You sit. You begin the chapter in which the harbor town learns to say no kindly and mean it. The bell practices. The tide approves. In the margin, the tidy hand offers tea. The sharp hand offers courage. The messy hand, which you are beginning to suspect belongs to a keeper who signs everything with their whole life, offers a recipe for a cake that will not collapse even when the day tries to. You write until the fair has disassembled itself and gone to sleep in boxes. You write until the moon goes thin again. When you stop, the room refuses to let you apologize for stopping. Good night, you tell it. Good night, says the bell, twice. It begins small. A line you wrote in the harbor town appears in your classroom notes where no such line belongs. Do not confuse silence with consent, it says under a sketch of a medieval hinge. Your tutor circles it, approving, as if the architecture of doors includes the ones in throats. You do not mind. You mind later, when the baker from chapter 3, who hears loaves by vowels, offers you a cinnamon twist on the way to breakfast and you take it because no one who can hear vowels would lie. The twist is warm as kept promises. You eat it while you think about whether any of this is a problem. Fun notices first. Your pages are wandering, he says, cheerful and worried. He tilts his stitched book toward the light. 2 letters have migrated from one line to another, turning harbor into haber and neighbor into nearer. See? They're practicing being closer than they were. Should we stop, you ask, and the word we makes the room lift its head. The margin writes, the library will match your boundaries if you make any. You test this by asking the baker to please remain in his page unless invited. The next morning he waves from paragraph 4. Consent, he mouths, pointing to his ear, and returns to kneading. That would be the end of it, if not for the chapter you wrote the night you were too sad to speak to anyone but ink. In it, your harbor town loses its bell tower to a storm that does not apologize. The townsfolk gather in the quiet that follows. No one rushes to fill it. Slowly, by agreement not decree, they choose a different bell, a handbell this time, small and bright, passed between them so no one person is responsible for declaring the hour beyond their own ability to tell it. The next week, Thornmere's West Tower, the one whose bell has always sounded a little more certain than the others, cracks. No storm. No drama. Just a long, kind crack that convinces the bell to rest. In the gap between the old sound and the committee meeting to decide a replacement, something remarkable happens. Students begin carrying their own bells. Some are metal, some wood, some no more than a spoon and a mug, but every hour on the hour, the campus rings with an overlapping consent of time. No single bell orders anyone. Everyone agrees to remember together. The room hums like a cat who knows it is welcome on the good chair. The loom's threads have barely moved, but you can feel their approval in the bones of the floor. Arin, says the bell, and you hear your name in a new register, caretaker. I didn't do this alone, you tell it. You think of fun, of the page hands, of the baker who stayed in his sentence because you asked. Tidy, caretaking is a plural verb. Sharp, authority is what remains after you've given away everything you wanted to keep for yourself and discovered you are still abundant. Messy, proud of you, kid. You put your head down on the table and laugh into the wood until it forgives you for the moisture. There is one more leak. It is a kind leak, and still it frightens you, because it is the size of your first fear. A letter arrives from home, your mother's handwriting, your father's joke in the margin in the wrong place. The envelope smells like the hallway where you learned to ride a second-hand bicycle. There is news you can hold and news that holds you. At the end, a line, we are trying to be a lighthouse for you, not a rope. Tell us if we are wrong. You are 20 people at once reading that sentence. The child who never asked for directions. The almost adult who would like to. The keeper who keeps beginnings safe from endings that arrive too early. You take the letter to the room. You place it beside the Stormlight book. You say, help me answer. The kettle does the thing it does when it wants you to try first. You write, I am learning to ring my own hours. Please keep a window lit. I will come through when I can see it. The margin approves with a small star. Fun, who has learned your timing, arrives as if summoned by the version of you who needed him. He brings cake that does not collapse. You watch him cut it and realize that you have become the kind of person who knows where the knives are, and where the napkins, and how to ask for help out loud. Between bites, he says, the loom has a request. How do you know? He gestures to his key. It rattles when there's mending to be done. The book flips to a blank page. The tidy hand writes a heading in neat capitals. The story that must end differently. Under it, the sharp hand draws a map. Not of land. Of consequence. Each path shows what happens if your harbor town keeps its bell tower broken, if it replaces it with one too heavy for anyone to ring without resentment, if it refuses to ring at all. Only one path glows, the one where the handbell remains a moving hour shared between shoulders. You already did this, Fun says, confused. They chose. Here, you say, pointing to the campus outside your window. We did. But somewhere else, you tap the map. The glowing thread stutters, then goes dim as if ashamed to be caught failing. The library has neighbors, Fun breathes. Stories adjacent to stories. You think of the ribbon. The key. The feather ? The loom mends what timelines tear, you say. I guess sometimes that tear isn't in our page. The margin asks a question you will remember the rest of your life. Are you willing to be useful to a place you will never see? You sit very still and check your pockets for bravery. You find enough. Yes, you tell the room. Show me where to write. The instructions are simple and impossible. Write a chapter that teaches someone you will never meet how to keep a bell without owning it. You sharpen your pen, which is to say, you choose a tone that can be heard without being shouted. You begin not with rules, but with a story about a street where everyone knows the hour by the way the baker's window fogs. You talk about the tired woman in the corner house who rings the handbell at 10 not because anyone asked her to but because her life returns to her each time she lifts it. You talk about the boy who carries the bell between classes and gives it to someone new at noon because he promised himself to practice letting go of good things before they become chains. You tuck in a recipe for cake that does not collapse, and a footnote about napkins that are kept in the drawer by the sink, and a joke about how time is mostly agreeing to be surprised together. You include a margin that asks for consent out loud. You leave a blank line for the name of the person who reads this and decides to try. Every paragraph is a hand extended. When you finish, the loom breathes. The threads brighten in a way you feel in your tongue. A line unstutters on the map. Somewhere you will never go, a small bell finds a new hand. Fun's key quiets. You turn the last page and the tidy hand writes at the bottom, as if signing a postcard. Thank you, keeper. You look for someone else in the room to see if they heard that. The bell says your name, not as a summons, but as a completion. Keeper, it repeats. I'm not, you begin, but you are. Not sovereign. Not owner. Not anything with a crown. Keeper, the person who stays to stack chairs because the party was real and someone ought to carry its echoes carefully. Keeper, the person who returns what was owed even when they liked the weight in their pocket. Keeper, the person who makes a window and keeps it clean so the next dreamer can see through. You laugh a little at yourself for how grand that sounds and then you don't, because some words ought to be grand to fit their work. Fun leans his head on your shoulder without asking because that is the kind of friendship you have made here, asked for once, granted, and thereafter carried with care. What will you write next? He asks. Something that teaches me how to rest, you say, shocking yourself with your accuracy. And something that begins without asking permission. The margin, messy and fond, writes, bedtime chapter, then. So you write one. For yourself. For the room. For whoever climbs a seam and finds a hush that knows their name. You write. It is night, and the bell has said enough. The harbor is still but not empty. The tide files away the day. Someone is baking. Someone is mending. Someone is laying a ribbon where promises are kept. Somewhere, a key decides to be a door and is happier for it. Somewhere else, a lantern changes its address from grief to use. On your tongue, the taste of cake that remembered to be cake. In your hands, nothing you cannot carry. In your chest, a room that is not on any map, that is yours not because you own it, but because you answer when it calls your name. You set down the pen. The kettle knows better than to speak. The bell rings once, the exact sound a window makes when opened. On your way out, you see that the plaque you never noticed now carries a second line, carved shallow beside the first. You read it with your finger. Please return books to their proper dreams. Please return yourself to yours. You go to bed earlier than you would have last month. You dream of a harbor in which every hour is shared and no one is late because no one is alone. In the morning, you write the harbor at dawn. It keeps it. You write yourself a tomorrow. You keep it. The winter inside you is not gone. Winters are not thieves. They are seasons. But you have learned where to be when they arrive, in a room that listens, with a bell that knows your name, keeping beginnings safe from endings that show up before their time. And when a new hand finds the seam in the wall and the click gives way to hush, they will find your margin note in a messy, rounded hand they will not yet know they can trust. Welcome. Begin.